Son, where'd you find this?
Don't be offended by the truth. They be offended because you called out the truth. Simple as that. They don't want to hear any other narrative that makes them look bad.
One thing I can't stand at this big grown age is somebody who acts like cause and effect does not exist. Like, yes, your actions caused this outcome. Yes, what you did lit the match. Like, why are you surprised and playing victim?
Guys, Chico, they never lie.
That's how you know somebody doesn't respect you. They listen to reply, not to be understood. They cut you off. They minimize what actually matters to you. They laugh at your boundaries, and then they call you sensitive when you try to hold the line. They show up late, they cancel last minute, forget the things you've told them, because in their world, your time, your energy, even your voice aren't a priority. They're just an option. You see, there are two kinds of people. Those who adjust when they realize they've actually hurt you, and those who expect you to adjust so they don't have to change. You don't need to be disrespected loudly to be disrespected deeply. Sometimes you'll see it. It's just in their tone, in their patterns, in the silence after you're known. Respect isn't what they say when they're watching. It's how they act when they think you'll.
Examining his own attitude towards the possibilities of peace, towards the Soviet Union, towards the course of the Cold War.
I'm Muslim. It was a way of making me feel that they were a part of me.
You see it on the bridge. I think if the government had to change the screw in the bridge, they have to shut it down. They got state troopers out there. They got planes closed. They got those strange machines. How did they get up?
What up, peoples? Blessings to the folk. Happy hump day. I hope all is well with everybody. I hope you made it to your destinations safe. A shout out to my poets, my writers, my content creators, so on and so forth. Shout outs to Nat Schooler, by the way. If I didn't get a chance to check out the show this morning, definitely check that one out. Love chopping it up with the brother. He's brand new to the panel. You'll see him Wednesdays and Thursdays. He won't be with us this Thursday. He will be with us next Thursday. But that was a pretty good one. Check that one out. I got Sydney in building. You know how we do on Wednesdays. I'm going to bring her up. And we're going to get the show rolling. Do me a solid. Like, share, repost, hype this video up. Let the people know that we are on. And let's get it. Sid, what up?
I was like, oh, I'm on mute. I'm doing pretty good. How are you doing?
I'm cool. I'm not feeling this wishy-washy weather. It's cold one day, feel like it's gonna snow. Then the next day it's tumultuous. It's you gotta wear joggers and I don't like that.
Yeah, we had a cold bubble a couple weeks ago, or like a week and a half ago. But now we're back to like, yeah, it's June, the middle of summer. It's really hot, mildly humid. So the weather here can't really decide what it's doing either.
Best thing you can do is be prepared for whatever, because I'm really susceptible to getting sick with the weird stuff. That's why I don't really particularly like it too much, because I wake up in cold sweats and then 2 hours later I got the runny nose, I got a migraine, and just leave me alone.
Yeah. I for me, it always throws me off because our house is always extremely cold. My husband and our roommate do not like hot temperatures. And so we have fans going on all the time. My husband has a fan that's like always pointing out the window. So it can get very cold in the house, and it's deceptive because then I'll go outside in a long sleeve and long pants. And as soon as I step outside, I'm like, oh my God, it's like 85 degrees outside. What is where I was cold inside and needed a full sweater and slippers and everything. So it always throws me off when, like, and it'll look so mild outside. You'll see like a little layer of fog in the distance. And then you go outside and you're like, wow, this is Las Vegas.
Right on, right on. Hey, look, I'm gonna let you do your thing. Real quick, shout out to Jalen. Appreciate you for pulling up. Shout outs to everybody that's in the building. I'm gonna give you the floor, let you do your thing. I'll be here in the background. Um, y'all grab you some snack on, something to drink, get comfortable, and I'll see you in a little bit.
All right. Awesome. Hello, Jalen. Welcome. I am excited to do this one. It's something I think about a lot. I just don't really talk about it a lot. Obviously, I'm usually going for more scientific topics. But I felt this is really important to talk about because it is at this point affecting most people. We have a housing issue in the US. It's quite obvious. And it's an abundance of parts to this issue, where we have a housing shortage, where there just isn't enough homes in areas where they need homes. There's an abundance of homes that aren't selling in places that people don't want to live anymore. And we also have a lot of people that are just flat out not able to afford housing because things are wildly expensive to buy. So we have a strange dichotomy in the US where we do have an abundance of houses in certain areas. It's just people can't afford to live in them, or they can't find jobs in the areas where there are houses. And so we have record homelessness, which is, from what I've researched, obviously the data is not going to be complete because a lot of homeless people are not accounted for. It's hard to keep track of people that are technically housed but aren't actually housed, such as individuals that are staying with parents, staying with friends, couch hopping, as well as the number of people that I've seen online who are now staying in storage units and hotels, living in parks, living in their cars, RVs, you name it. People are getting a lot more creative. So I think that they, just in my personal opinion, I think they underestimate how many homeless individuals we have in the country. But it's undoubtedly at the level that it was in the Great Depression. Great Depression, I believe it was 25% of the population was considered homeless. And we're definitely, I think we're there. Not to mention, I think the term is called underhoused, where it's the category for people that they have housing, but they're house poor. They have the place to live, but they can't afford anything else. Like, they're putting most of their income, 60% and up of their income, into the house itself, the rent, the mortgage, whatever it is, just to stay afloat. And so even though they have a place, they're still technically like underwater because of the cost of housing. So housing is a huge issue already, like access to housing, affordability of housing. But something that I've also been noticing over the past couple years, particularly since 2020, around the time that we had that buying boom where we had all of those people sitting at home starting to like invest and get into other things, as opposed to just working. And that's when a lot of people started buying a lot of homes. I guess partially started because of the pandemic, people needing like a place to go, a place to settle down. Maybe people were trying to get away from apartments and stuff like that. But there was a huge spike in the housing market in 2020 and 2021, which significantly drove up prices. If you ever look at prices between before 2020 and post 2020, the difference is insane. I've seen houses. I look at houses in my area for pricing and stuff like that, just to kind of understand what's going on in my area. And if you look at homes before 2020, that house would easily go for sub 100,000. Like a 2-3 bedroom house you could get for like 90,000, 125,000. Now those houses are going to be 500,000, 600,000, 700,000. I've even seen like rat infested, like drug base houses that are selling cash 600,000, 500,000 for like you have to tear this down and rebuild it houses. So housing prices are a massive issue. But on top of that, just like other commodities in life, I'm sure we've all noticed the decline of quality in clothing and furniture and cars and all the other things. The same thing is happening to houses. And so I wanted to talk about that part, because I think unless you're a home buyer, and even if you are a home buyer, a lot of people aren't aware that this problem is happening. But through compilations that I see online of both people buying houses and people who sell houses and people who build houses, or I forgot what they're called, but the people that like check out the house before somebody buys it so they can point out all the issues. I've seen a lot of videos from them as well, where they're just going through the house and showing all of the issues with these new houses that are being built. In the past, homes were not built at such a high rate of speed. They would do like bulk builds, or they'd build entire neighborhoods. But now a lot of homes are being built like against the clock. They're like as fast as you possibly can. And so the housing quality, the way the house is put together, is really trashy, to put it lightly. I have seen hundreds of videos of surveyors and homeowners and stuff going through and showing parts of their house, and there's literally like the siding can just be pulled off, like the plats that go along the side of your house to prevent rain from getting in. You can just wiggle them and pull them out. I've seen like holes in the wall that were never filled in. There was one crazy one where they showed from the inside of the house, the beams that were holding up the ceiling. It just had like nails sticking through, all coming out like just spiky all along the bottom of that board, and it was through the whole building. Unfinished quality, where there's nails sticking out, there's things that are not filled in with insulation, there's windows that literally have like holes between the window and the wall. I even see this in my own house. If you look around my house and you pay attention for it, you can actually see like some of our doorways are not straight. One of the walls, or like one of the sides of the door, will go like kind of diagonally. There's also one area in our living room that has like I don't know why it's there, but just like a piece that kind of comes out, a partial wall. And if you look at it, like dead on, it's actually like off angle. It doesn't actually line up at right angles. It's more like, I think it's more like that kind of shape. More subtle than that, but it's still like not at right angles. You can also see that in our ceilings. There are parts of our where the walls kind of come up at a diagonal, where they don't meet at a 90-degree angle with the ceiling. You can even see parts of one of our walls. It like isn't straight. It actually will come out a bit and then go back in. So even in my own house, I see these things happening. And for example, when we moved in here, we had a built-in dishwasher. It literally fell out of its holder piece, like under the counter. It like came unglued from inside the cabinet and fell on the floor and like tore up the tiles on the floor. The flooring that they used, by the way, I'm not complaining about our house. I'm very grateful that we have this house. We didn't buy the house. We're a military family, so they put us here. But it's a perfect example of exactly what's happening everywhere else, because they do the same thing in military housing as they do in most forms of housing, unless you're getting some like bougie, like fancy renovators or whatever and pay for like premium materials. You're basically going to be getting very similar quality. The flooring that they used downstairs, just to give you an idea, my parents redid our floors in our kitchen in the 90s, and they used real wood. That floor, with the exception of one incident where they dropped the corner of a piece of furniture and it like dented broke off a piece of the floor, a small piece, maybe the size of my thumb. That floor is not scuffed, nothing. Ours, we've moved the couch a couple times because there's, stuff underneath it. I have kids, toys roll under there, food ends up there somehow. We also have a little like spinny comfortable chair. Both of them have torn the floor. I can pick it up. I can pick up the chair with my own strength, and it has torn the floor. So that gives you an idea of just how terrible these materials are. Part of the problem is that the materials that they are using to build these homes are just flat out poor quality to begin with. Back in prior to the 1950s, the transition has been kind of slow. Like the 60s, 70s, 80s, 90s, those houses are pretty decent. But if you get houses that are built in the early 1900s, 1920s, 1930s, and even in the 1800s, those houses are going to be secure, because one of the biggest factors in the poor quality of housing right now is the wood. Back before we started deforesting everything, trees would be massive. I urge you, if you're ever curious, look up logging from the 1850s and look at the types of trees that they were cutting down. Some of these trees were big enough. There was one tree they cut down in Northern California that was big enough that they turned the stump into a dance platform type thing, which they would literally hold parties on the trunk. So the trees that they were cutting down were extremely thick, hard wood. The older wood is, the harder the wood becomes, because younger trees, because they don't have the width, they have to be more flexible in case there's wind and severe rain and stuff like that. And so they're more spongy. Whereas hardwood, older trees, redwood, cedar, stuff like that, they're going to be a lot harder once they get bigger. Additionally, the planks are going to be much thicker. And so you can do more with those pieces of wood. Nowadays, the wood that is being used for building houses is more akin to plywood. Plywood is more of a composite of wood where they like shred up the wood and then mash it together into kind of a paste, and then they make them. So they're not actually pieces of wood. They're made from wood material, if that makes sense. Let me pull up a picture just to show you what I'm talking about. So this is a piece of wood from the 1800s versus from 2025. As trees grow, make sure you can see me. Turn down that brightness. As trees grow, they form rings. And the more rings a tree has, the more sturdy and stable it is. And so it's kind of hard to tell in the middle, but all of those rings, you can tell. So that wood is going to be a lot more sturdy, more water resistant, less flammable. Whereas you see 2025, that was made from a tree that they probably farmed, where they grow trees specifically to make wood. And you can see how far apart the rings are, which means that wood is going to be very spongy, because the outer part, that's basically where the bark would have been when it was like exposed to the air. And so the more rings you have, the more strong that wood is going to be. So that wood is like, you could probably puncture that with, like, if you took a screwdriver or a hammer, you could probably dent that really easily. That would be pretty hard to probably like nick it, but this one is gonna be noticeably softer. Like, there's some plywood that I've handled before that like you can like puncture it with your nail. So that is those types of woods, the ones that I showed you in the, here's another one, like 1919 versus 2019. This type of wood used to be the bones of most houses, with exception to some places that would make their houses out of adobe or brick. Houses that are like, the Victorians that we'd see, the big, beautiful, like ornate mansions and stuff, that they would have been using those hardwoods. And so that is why they have lasted so long. Additionally, with harder woods, because it's a harder wood, there's not as much pulp in there. And so termites and other insects aren't as interested in that form of wood either. So if you have the softer wood, it's much easier for you to get termites than it is if you have that really nice old wood. And old wood like that is a dying resource. We don't have old stands of trees anymore. We basically have trees that are groves of trees that are under 50 years old. And if it and the old trees that do exist, we can't use because most of them are protected at this point. So we don't have access to that really good building material anymore. And so we end up relying on plywood and other materials that are similar to plywood, but manufactured. Like a lot of the building materials that they use now are basically just plastic derivatives. before I forget, let me also show you the that stump that I was talking about. Just taking it, and then also think about how much wood that you're able to get from those giant trees. Let's see. Here's this one. That one kind of gives you a good idea of just how big it was. You can build a lot of houses out of that. Compared to like trees nowadays, you could put your arms around. So yeah, also the fact that it was a continuous piece of wood as opposed to composite, where you're putting either gluing or fusing in some way these pieces of wood together, it's automatically going to be more sturdy when you have one solid piece of wood as opposed to a bunch of different things put together. So yeah, wood is a huge aspect of why the homes are such poor quality. As I mentioned a little bit earlier, old wood trees are more fire resistant and more water resistant as well. And so you are less prone to environmental damage when you build with those other materials as well, which is, again, why we can see a lot of these fantastic mansions from like the 1800s that are still with, as long as they haven't allowed them to fall into disarray, like they're in pretty good condition for when they were first built. And a lot of them, if they weren't turned into historical museums, they'd still be usable as homes, where now some homes have to be torn down like after a couple decades because of how poorly that they've been built. Another reason why the quality has been declining, I'll go back to the other materials, but this kind of relates to the wood, so I wanted to kind of add it here, is the skills that exist. Back in, prior to the 1950s, honestly, even probably like 70s, 80s, a lot more people were skilled, trained woodworkers. Woodworking is a talent that a lot of people underestimate. There's a lot that goes into understanding how to put things together. It's very simplistic to think you just take multiple pieces of wood and hammer them together, and there you go. You have a put together furniture box or whatever. But there's a lot that goes into it. Like there's different cuts that you can learn how to do so you can put things together without even having to use nails. There are ways to, you have to pay attention to the grain and which way it's going. I don't know a ton in terms of like the woodworking skill itself, but my dad he passed away. He was a woodworker and he knew how to build things that were really high quality. And he used to tell me some of the tricks and tools and stuff like that to improve the quality of what you're making. And I think a lot of people don't have the patience nowadays for that unless they like genuinely love doing it. And additionally, like woodworking takes a lot of time to master, to train for. And with the rapid turnout of both labor and homes, it doesn't really give people the opportunity to actually become skilled at those things. And the majority of people being employed as woodworkers are going to be the quick turnaround types. Really, the people that are the true masters at woodworking are going to be more like niche artists, where their focus is like repairing or building, but for a high price. And most people aren't buying that type of stuff anymore. The price of wood itself is also exorbitantly higher than it used to be. And so it also makes it not as worth it to do woodworking as it had been in the past. It's no longer a functional career. It's more so a hobby now. There's construction workers, but there are very few like woodworkers now as an actual like career. So that has also kind of led to the decline in the quality of homes, because we not only don't have good materials to build with in terms of wood and the structure of the house, but we also don't have people that are skilled in those types of things. And this one is more speculation, but I also think that construction nowadays, with exception to people that like it was a family trade or they just love doing it, a lot of the time it's a career that people fall back on, where it's not what they want to do with their life, but if they can't find any other job, then construction will have to do. It's kind of like the same thing with like shipping and like working at UPS or FedEx or Amazon or whatever, where it's like, well, if you can't find any other job, then just get that job. And people generally don't stay in those careers as long. It used to be a trade, something that somebody made their life out of. But now it seems like it's more a backup job that they give to kids straight out of college to build up work ethic, or they're out of prison and can't find another job, or the economy just sucks and they can't find a job, so that's what they pick. And so there isn't a lot of effort, I guess, put into training people that are working in it. It's just kind of like, here, do this task, here's these tools, bare minimum, like just get it done. It's not a craft anymore. And so in general, the skeletons of the houses are already poor quality. You're not using good materials. You're not using people who know what they're doing. You're just kind of going based off of written plans, most likely, and maybe have somebody skilled to be like, oh no, you don't actually do it this way, you do it this way. But again, with the fast turnaround, the expectations of like, oh, well, you have to build this in 6 months or something like that, it doesn't give you the chance to make things nice. The point is to just get it done. And so just the foundation of the house itself is already poor quality. And then you're just going to slap more poor quality materials on top of it. And then overall, you're just going to end up getting a really terribly put together house that they don't even have pride in. They don't care about it. Houses in the past, like, used to be a group thing, especially like 1800s, 1900s. People would have house raising parties where they would, all the people in the community would get together and provide the skills, the tasks, or the talents that they had to help whatever family was arriving, build their first home. And so they'd all work together and put together this house and also modify it to match the needs of that family. And they also had, at that time, a much deeper understanding of how the environment would affect the house and the people inside, the occupants. And so more thought was put into making sure, is this going to be cold in the summer? Is this going to be hot in the winter? We want to make sure that it is a comfortable home for the person living in it and safe. And so they had a lot of tricks and little things that they do to improve the quality of the inside of the home. There's a lot of really cool architectural, I don't know what to call it beside tricks, but things that they've done inside older homes that improve ventilation, temperature control, the flow of like smoke out of the house if they relied on the chimney. There's a lot of things that they knew how to do, so they didn't even need technology to maintain certain parts of the house. The one that comes to mind is old Victorian houses often will have little tiny windows at the top of the roof that they could open and close to let hot air out or keep in cold air, or like keep in the warm air. And so even without electricity, they had a basically working air conditioner. So yeah, they knew a lot more about what they were doing in a way that improved the quality of the home and the quality of life inside the home. Now it's much less about like what can we do for the people that are going to be moving in here, and more so what's the bare minimum that we can put in here and make the most profit. Even like comparing houses in the 1970s, 60s to now, like there's so much more character in those houses. They actually cared more, it seems, about what they created, where they tried to make it more of an art rather than just a thing that you have to do because people need houses. And so now, like beyond the structure of the house, which obviously the skill has declined, the quality has declined, but the stuff that they're putting on top of that, on top of the structure to make the rest of the house, all of that has also declined as well. Not only do they not care much about what they're using, they just kind of do whatever's the cheapest material and looks visually the nicest, even if it's not actually that high quality of the material. They also don't really put in a lot of logic, I guess, into the things that they're using. Kind of like what I was saying with our vinyl floors. They just pick what looks good, not what's actually going to stand up to the test of time. I think at this point, a lot of builders kind of expect that people are just going to gut the house and renovate it to match what they want anyway. So who cares? Like, you don't have to use any quality materials at all for these houses. You can just put in whatever. And as long as it looks nice and it gets someone to buy it, that's all that matters, even if it's only going to last like 2 years. But this is what we're seeing. They're overwhelmingly using plastic material alternatives to build homes, to decorate the homes and stuff like that. They're sorry. I've seen like plastic shingles on roofs that break instead of clay, which clay helps to moderate the temperature inside the house. But of course, that's too expensive, so they want to use plastic tiles. They used to use, I forgot what fiberglass, I think, for insulation, as well as just high quality walls that didn't leak air. And they helped moderate the temperature inside. But now they use I think it's a polyurethane foam, like a hardened foam. And one of the problems that I've heard with that one, not only does it degrade really quickly, it's highly flammable. So we're building houses, same with vinyl chloride, the stuff that they use on flooring, some of the other materials that they use for like the roofing and stuff like that. A lot of this plastic stuff that they're choosing to put into homes are extremely flammable. And not only are they flammable, but unlike wood, when wood burns, it kind of burns away, pieces might fall off, whatever. When plastic burns, it melts. And so if you're inside a home that has a lot of plastic in the walls or the ceiling or whatever, you're going to have burning plastic dripping down onto you as your house is on fire. Not to mention those, when you burn plastic like that, it releases fumes that can be deadly. So not only are they choosing materials that are just straight up poor quality, it also could kill you. Additionally, plastic is a very poor conductor of heat and cold, and so it really doesn't offer very much protection in really cold temperatures or really hot weather. Not to mention, if it gets hot enough, you're going to have damage to the parts that are exposed to the sun anyways, because plastic doesn't, like with wood, because it's a natural substance, it'll expand and contract as the environment gets hotter or colder. There's water, the structure of wood allows water to be held inside without causing damage. But with plastic, it doesn't have a high quantity of water content in comparison. And when it gets hot, it basically just cracks. It cracks, it dries out, it falls apart. Certain types of plastic even basically turn to dust. So the materials that they're using on the tops of your houses, on the sides of your houses, around your windows, on your floors, all of that stuff is not very resistant to damage, is not very resistant to temperature, is not very resistant to fire. And all of these things are terrible when you're trying to build a house that is safe for the people living in it. Not to mention, some of the types of materials that they use, even without fire touching it, will give off fumes anyways. You can, there's a reason why you cannot microwave plastic Tupperware or plastic cups, because it will leach those chemicals into your food when you cook with them. Not to mention, it could just straight up melt. But it can be dangerous. Some of this stuff is toxic and can be a carcinogen, causing cancer, and is not very resilient either to any sort of damage, and most of the time just has to be thrown away, which brings up another point too. It's terrible for the environment. With wood, it decomposes, it turns into habitat for other animals, bugs, whatnot. You can even use wood chips and whatever to help fertilize and make mulch and stuff for future plants. So it's sort of reusable in a way. You can also reclaim wood and use it for other purposes. With plastic, once it's trashed, it's trash. You can't do anything with it. The myth of plastic recycling is still pretty pervasive, where people think plastic, well, you just melt it down and reuse it. But as plastic gets used, gets exposed to the elements, gets exposed to heat, the bonds that make up the plastic break down, and it becomes a poorer quality plastic. And so that's why you see on the bottom of plastic objects, it'll have the little recycling symbol and have numbers. I think it's 1 through 6 or 1 through 4. And whichever number it has on the bottom is how many times that plastic has been reprocessed. And generally, once it reaches 3 to 4 times of reprocessing, it's not useful anymore. It's just not going to be stable enough to utilize as a material. And so when they do these renovations, when they gut these houses and throw out all of the flooring and the ceiling tile, the roof tiles and the plastic plumbing, all that's going in the trash. It's not being reused. The plastic plumbing brings up another resource that is not used anymore. Copper used to be the primary material used for piping, all the plumbing in your house, for your toilet, your bathroom, everything. Copper is antimicrobial, antibacterial, and it's also resistant to like chemicals in the water and stuff like that. It has a number of different properties that make it one of the safest materials to use when transporting water through the household. But they don't use it anymore because A, it's very expensive, and it's also harder to find. And so copper is no longer the normal method of normal material used for plumbing. Instead, we use plastic. And those are not good because with copper, it deals with temperature changes better because it's a metal, so it's malleable, it's soft. It enables the pipes to expand and contract if there's weather swings, particularly freezing weather. With plastic, it just ruptures, and oftentimes you have to okay, thank you. You have to throw out the entire line of piping, and you aren't able to just like it yes, you can here. It will oh my gosh, what's the word I want to use? It has a lot more chances for the plastic has a lot more chances for damage than copper pipes. And then also with copper, it's a metal, so you can just melt it and reform it into pipes, where the plastic, again, it just has to be thrown away. Also, plastic is more easily absorbent. I forgot, it's because of the way that plastic is, like, it forms cracks more easily. It has it's harder to get it to be a smooth surface, and so stuff like mold and bacteria, waste, stuff like that sticks more easily to the inside of plastic than copper. That's why, like, stainless steel dishes are a lot easier to keep clean and sanitized than plastic cups, reusable plastic cups, because eventually the little scratches and micro cuts that happen inside the plastic are just going to collect all that bacteria. And so you're more likely to have like contamination issues with plastic piping. Additionally, what was I going to say? Oh yeah, I've seen in recent years they've been making what do you call it? 3D printed houses. They're like, oh, it's the next thing. It's the next big thing. This is how we're going to make houses of the future. We're just going to 3D print houses. So one person that I watch brought up a really good point that still sticks with me to this day. I always wonder about the people that buy those houses, what they're going to do. So when you 3D print the house, you're 3D printing around all of the piping and wires that are in the wall and all that type of stuff. When you 3D print it, it's basically a solid block of plastic. So if you have an issue with the plumbing or the wiring in your walls, you have to rip out the entire wall. Like, you have to cut a whole section of the wall out just to repair a small thing. Whereas, like, in a building like this, you cut a hole, you figure out where the problem is, then you cut the hole, and then you can replace the plaster, you can replace the wood, whatever. In these, like, 3D printed houses, you have to replace, like, the entire wall just to fix a small thing. So I don't put a lot of stock into those 3D printed houses. It sounds great because they're like, oh yeah, we have a quick turnaround and we'll be able to make so many houses and we'll solve the homelessness crisis. But it's just going to end up as being more trash. And I mean, we all know that they don't actually care about homeless people. They just want more money. So they're just trying to do everything as cheaply as possible, using the least materials as possible, but getting the most amount of money as they can. But slight tangent, because obviously that's not the common method of building, but I had to throw that one in there. So yeah, the houses that are ending up on the market today, honestly, even when I look at houses, we're not like seriously looking at houses, but I still would like to buy a house one day, for security and whatnot purposes. I will never look at houses that were built after the 1990s. Maybe early 2000s, like before 2008. But most of the new houses, I just don't trust anymore because the materials that they are using are not suitable for the environment that those houses are in very frequently. Another example that made me think of, Florida. I mean, honestly, a lot of places that have humidity right now are having a massive issue with mold. If you're buying a new house, make sure to have somebody come in and check your house for mold, because there are people that are moving into these brand new, just refurbished, everything's like just been put in, and they open the wall and it's just black mold. That happened to our neighbor. They moved into their house. She had 2 older kids and she had just had a baby while they were in the house. And all of the older family members, her husband, her kids, they never had any skin issues. They never had any allergy issues. But when their son was born, he was having issues with allergies, with skin issues, with all sorts of like strange symptoms. And when they finally tested him to see what was going on, he had black mold in his bloodstream. And so they had housing come out and check out the house. And sure enough, they ripped out the wall of the living room and it was just black mold all behind the wall. And this is a very common issue that I've been seeing, where people move into these brand new houses and it's already infested with black mold. And while mold might not seem that big of a deal, like, oh, you just clean it out and stuff. Once black mold has established itself into the material, it basically has its little roots in there. And so it's almost impossible to remove without completely gutting the areas that they're touching. But it also, as they found out with the kid, causes health problems. It can be linked to toxicity in the body. It has been linked to certain like cancers and autoimmune disorders, and there's a lot of health issues that can come about because of exposure to black mold. And because of the fact that these houses are poorly insulated, they're poorly waterproofed, like water seeps through the walls very easily. The materials that they're using aren't very resistant to bacterial growth. Plastics allow humidity to persist between the different pieces. So if you have plastic on the outside of your house and then you have like a plasticized paint or some other sort of like material on the inside, it's going to be a sandwich of plastic holding in this moisture, which is what the mold loves. That's why you find it a lot in your bathroom, behind your sink, behind your toilet. But it's now loving the space between walls because that area it doesn't have a way for the moisture to escape. Plastic holds in water. And so any bit of moisture is going to be stuck in that wall and for mold and other things to take advantage of. So that's another huge issue. That's a side issue coming with the problems of these houses. I've also seen a lot of horror stories of people moving into their houses and they already have to like rebuild the roof, or they have to completely redo the plumbing because something wasn't even connected correctly. When we first moved in here, the I don't know what you call it, the thing in the house that like controls where the hot water and cold water, it was flipped in our bathroom. And so when you turn on the cold water, it would be hot, and then when you turn on the hot water, it would be nothing. It would just be cold all the time, no matter how long you waited for it. It would never turn hot. So things are just they're being put together poorly. They're being built by people that don't know what they're doing. They're being built so rapidly that problems are going unnoticed or ignored. The materials themselves are really poor quality. They don't stand up to the test of time. They cause more problems than they solve. They hold on to bacteria more easily. They can cause health problems with the fumes that they give off. Not to mention the use of these materials is bad for the environment, and the disposal of these materials is also bad for the environment. I would love if I could offer solutions, because this is definitely a big problem, widespread problem, particularly in the United States. Not just the United States, but it's a huge deal here because we're one of the we're one of the few countries that don't have a long history with like in-place architecture. A lot of the native populations that used to live here were migratory, and so most of them didn't create actual like settlements as they did in Europe and some of the other parts of the world. So we don't have an abundance of old style homes either. But yeah, we have a unique issue in America where we need more houses, but the houses we're getting are really terrible quality. But there aren't really easy answers for how to make this better, because some of the best materials that we could use are no longer really accessible to us. Using hardwoods is not an option anymore. We don't have access to trees like that. And obviously, growing trees like that take literal generations. Like these trees, some of the ones that they cut down that are that big were hundreds to thousands of years old. So it takes a very long time to regenerate nearly enough wood to produce a fraction of the houses that are necessary. And then obviously, like, the housing market itself is not in a vacuum. It is obviously also linked to a bunch of other issues that we have within the country, such as the decline of education, the decline of trade skills, the decline of our economy overall, the fact that cities are built car-centrically and not human-centrically, which makes it harder for, like, that's why we have suburbs, because we have suburbs and then we have city centers and people have to drive to and from. We don't have the integrated cities like you can find in Europe, Canada, and other places. So we have kind of a conglomeration of issues that make it very difficult to actually create genuinely good neighborhoods for people. And so in lieu of not having an actual solution to offer, what I can offer is words of caution. If you are going to be buying a house, do your research. Make sure you hire somebody who is reputable, who is skilled, who knows what they're talking about to survey your home, so they can tell you and point out all of the different areas that they think need to be fixed. Because when you buy a house, oftentimes the person selling the house, the realtor and whatever, they don't quite care about future problems. What they care about is getting that house out the door, or get it paid for and move on to the next house. So they're not going to be fully honest with you about the actual quality of that home. And honestly, they might not even know. They might not have the skill to know. So hire someone, I think they're called surveyors, it might have a different name, but basically hire somebody, an expert, to come in and investigate your house before you even sign on the dotted line. You do not want to be stuck with a hot potato of a house where you find out that you have to destroy the entire house and rebuild it just to have a house. And this is something that is happening where they know that there's the problem, but they don't want to be stuck with it. So they're trying to sell it off before they find out, someone else finds out about it. So make sure you have somebody come in, look at the foundation, look at the roof, look at where the windows and the doors, look at the walls, the wiring, the plumbing. There could be so much wrong with that house that you'll never see until you experience the repercussions for yourself, which can be hundreds of thousands of dollars of repairs in some cases. So yeah, get that expert before you ever consider buying a house, so they can tell you whether it is or isn't safe to buy that house. I also highly suggest, if you're able to, I know we're not all in the position to be able to, but if you can, find a house that's an older model. I know a lot of people are like, oh no, I want a modern house. I want, here's my grocery list that I want for this house. But honestly, older houses tend to stand up better. There was a construction, somebody involved in housing. I forgot exactly what his role was. I just remember picturing his quote from the documentary I watched, where he said, houses built in the 1950s and before will be here for another 100 years. Houses built after 2020, they're not going to be here in 50 years. Like, those houses are going to have to be torn down and rebuilt because they're such poor quality that they will not survive disasters, storms, just general existence, wear and tear. So I highly, highly, highly recommend buying houses that are older. Again, I know a lot of people don't want that because they're like, oh, it's an old house. As my husband jokingly says, I don't want to adopt a ghost. I recommend going for an older model because these are going to be much higher quality than the homes that are built today. And then one last thing, trust your gut. If you feel like something is wrong, something feels wrong about the house, it doesn't look right, the person seems shady, you think that you're getting sick but you don't know why, don't brush that aside. Don't be afraid to investigate and to seek. Go out for a minute. That she's quite distracting, my apologies. Don't be afraid to seek out experts, to be a complainer. I know that's a huge thing that I've heard. Do find somebody that you can trust to find out what's actually going on, because some of these issues can be dangerous. I have heard of people who were in poorly built homes dying in gas leaks, dying in fires, things going on behind the walls that they could not see, getting sick mysteriously, and they had no idea why, but they end up finding out that something is wrong with the house. Trust your gut. If you think something feels off about a home that you live in or a home that you're planning to buy, don't discount that and be like, oh, I'm sure it's just insert excuse. A home is an investment that should be a decades long thing. When you buy your house, unless you like make a lot of money and can just buy whatever you want, for the most part, that's going to be an investment that's going to last a good portion of your life, if not the rest of your life. And it's very, very important to take that decision as seriously as you possibly can, because housing and housing costs and all that stuff can make the difference between you thriving and you barely struggling to get by, barely surviving. So yeah, make sure that you are very diligent if you do buy a house to make sure you're actually getting something that is safe for you, safe for your family, and also in a location that is safe as well. I'll just throw this in as one last thing. Even though it doesn't really have much to do with quality of homes, just something to keep in mind. A lot of people will not disclose if your home is in a dangerous location. Homes can be located at the fringes of forests, which are wildfire risks. You could be located in a low-lying area that is a flood risk. You could be located close enough to a river that it's also a flood risk. Hurricane zones, tornado alley, earthquake zones. Make sure, based on where you're going to be moving, you understand the natural hazards as well, because that will also help you make a better decision about your house. Not all materials are sufficient to survive certain types of disasters. If you're in California, don't buy a brick house. If you're in Florida, don't buy a house along the beach unless maybe it's on some really good concrete pillars. If you're in Tornado Alley, you want that brick house. You want that stone house. You don't want a plywood home. So make sure you are paying attention to the things around you as well, because as one of my favorite disaster scientists says, is I don't see the view, I see a fire or a flood. So make sure that, again, you do all the research you possibly can. Look into the history of the home. Look how old the home is. Look at the neighborhood. Look at you can see kind of the history of the buyers and the repairs and stuff like that. All the details matter, because all of those little changes can make a difference in how safe your home is and how high or low of quality it will be. So with that, I hope you learned a lot. I highly recommend, if you're interested in this type of stuff, looking up videos on YouTube just to see what I'm talking about. I know I threw a lot of examples at you, but it helps to kind of drill it in when you actually see the videos of what people are showing inside their homes. One of my favorite YouTubers to watch is, what's his name? Zach Rios. He often shows compilations of people showing what their house is like. He's my favorite, but there are other YouTubers that will show like the quality of houses. And really, all you have to look up on YouTube or Google is houses suck these days, or houses are terrible, or houses building quality. And you'll find plenty of examples of how bad housing has become. If you don't believe me, I promise you that stuff is out there. Anyway, other than that, I really hope that you were able to learn something, and I appreciate all of the viewers today. Let me just check out the comments really quick. But yeah. Yeah, exactly. Be appreciative for what you do have. And also, yes, just like what Numinous said, the materials that your house is made out of, even to the type of wood, the type of metals, it does matter. So yeah, do your research and yeah, have a really enjoyable week, an enjoyable weekend, and I will see you guys next time.
Examining his own attitude towards the possibilities of peace, towards the Soviet Union, towards the course of the Cold War.
Art muscle. It was a way of making me feel that they were a part of me.
But you see it on the bridge. I think if the government had to change the screw in the bridge, they have to shut it down. They got state troopers out there. They got lanes closed. They got those strange machines. How did they get up